The letter sat quietly on Alexander Reed's desk, an outlier among the sleek glass, steel pens, and contracts worth millions. The corner of the envelope was smudged with something pink, crayon, maybe. It didn't belong there, not in this world of sharp suits and sharper deals. For a moment, the CEO of Reed Enterprises simply stared at it, his brow furrowed. He had just finished firing an entire department, his schedule was full of back-to-back investor calls, yet this little letter, it pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain. "Should I throw it out, sir?" his assistant asked, pausing at the door. Alexander opened his mouth to say yes, it was what he did with anything unnecessary. But something about the handwriting stopped him. The letters were uneven, the R backward, the ink slightly smeared. It looked like a child's effort to be taken seriously. He waved his assistant away. "No, leave it." When he finally slit open the envelope, a faint scent of bubblegum and hospital disinfectant filled the air. Inside was a small, wrinkled piece of pink stationery, decorated with tiny stickers of stars and hearts. The words, written in blue crayon, were simple, so painfully simple. "Dear Mr. Reed, my name is Lily. I don't want toys or candy for Christmas. I just want to meet my daddy before I go to sleep forever." The air left his lungs. His hand froze, the paper trembling between his fingers. He read it again, slower this time, each word cutting deeper. It wasn't just the plea that broke him, it was the quiet finality of sleep forever. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the city skyline beyond his window. The lights blinked in the distance like indifferent stars. He turned the paper over and noticed one more line scrawled unevenly at the bottom. "Mom said you used to love her, even before you became so busy." For a moment, the mighty Alexander Reed couldn't breathe. He felt the years unravel. The long hours, the arguments, the way he'd chosen boardrooms over bedtime stories. And there, signed in shaky blue crayon, was the name that turned his blood cold, Lily Carter. His heart lurched. Clara Carter. He hadn't said her name aloud in nearly 7 years. The letter slipped from his hand, landing silently among the contracts that had once defined his life. Now, all he could see was that pink paper, and a little girl's desperate wish that he could never ignore. Rain fell in thin, silvery threads over the city, washing away the morning's noise and leaving everything blurred. Alexander Reed stood outside St. Mary's Children's Hospital, his black umbrella useless against the wind. He'd driven there without telling anyone, no driver, no assistant, no press. For once, he wasn't the CEO stepping out of a luxury car. He was just a man trembling before a door he wasn't sure he deserved to open. He hesitated at the entrance, watching the nurses and parents hurry in and out. Their faces carried exhaustion and quiet hope. He felt like an intruder in a place built on innocence and love, two things he'd long traded for power. When he finally walked in, the sterile scent of disinfectant hit him, clean, sharp, unforgiving. The white walls were covered in children's drawings, smiling suns, crooked houses, rainbows drawn by shaky hands. They were bright, alive, but somehow heartbreaking. "Can I help you, sir?" a nurse asked softly, eyeing his tailored suit. I'm here to see Lily Carter," he said, his voice almost breaking on the name. Her expression softened immediately. "You must be her father." He hesitated. "Yes," he whispered, and the word felt both foreign and right. She nodded and led him down a long corridor. Each step echoed in the silence, the hum of machines and distant laughter threading through the air. They passed open rooms filled with tiny figures curled under blankets, some bald, some clutching toys. He had built towers that scraped the sky, but none of them felt as heavy as this hallway. When they stopped, the nurse quietly opened a door. "She's awake today, but she gets tired easily." Inside, the room was warm, filled with the soft hum of monitors. A paper chain of colorful rings hung over the bed, each one marked with a tiny wish: see a rainbow, eat ice cream, dance again. And then he saw her. Lily was smaller than he imagined, her skin pale and her hair thin, but her eyes, those were bright, wide, full of light. She looked up as he entered. For a moment, confusion flickered across her face. Then recognition bloomed. "You came," she whispered, her voice trembling but happy. "Mom said you might not remember me." Alexander's chest tightened painfully. He took a slow step forward, his throat raw. "Of course I remember," he said, kneeling beside her bed. His reflection shimmered in the metal rail, unfamiliar, broken. She reached out, her tiny fingers brushing his hand. "It's okay if you forgot," she said with a faint smile. "I just wanted to see you once. So I can tell the angels that my daddy's real." He swallowed hard, the weight of her words crushing him. For the first time in years, Alexander Reed, untouchable, unshakable, felt tears burn his eyes. The world outside could wait. Here, in this quiet hospital room, a little girl had given him something money could never buy, another chance to be human. The rain had stopped by the time night fell, but the city outside Lily's window still glimmered with a wet, restless glow. Inside the small hospital room, the world seemed to pause, a cocoon of warmth, humming softly with machines and the faint rhythm of Lily's breathing. Alexander sat beside her bed, his coat draped over the chair, his sleeves rolled up. Hours had passed, though neither of them seemed to notice. "Do you ever get bored being important?" Lily asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was fragile, but there was mischief in her eyes. He smiled faintly, caught off guard by her question. "Sometimes," he admitted, "it's not as fun as it sounds. Mom says being important means you forget to smile," she said, twirling a strand of her thin hair around her finger. That hit him harder than he expected. He looked down at her, at the tubes and monitors, at her brave little grin, and realized how true that was. He had forgotten, not just to smile, but to live. To distract her, he picked up a picture book from the bedside table. "What about this one?" he asked. Her eyes lit up. "That's my favorite, the little star who forgot to shine." He opened it, his deep voice filling the room. As he read, Lily giggled at the silly parts, correcting him whenever he skipped a line. "You're not very good at this, Daddy," she teased, and for a moment, time folded in on itself. He could almost see her at home, sitting cross-legged in a pink nightgown, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, waiting for one more bedtime story. When the nurse peeked in, she found them both laughing, the powerful CEO and the tiny girl who had somehow become his entire world. Lily's hand rested in his, her eyelids drooping as exhaustion slowly crept in. "You should rest," he whispered. She shook her head weakly. "If I fall asleep, I'll miss you." His throat tightened. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, even though he didn't know how long he'd have with her. After she finally drifted off, he stayed. He watched her breathe, memorizing every sound, every flutter of her lashes. His phone buzzed with missed calls, board members, assistants, deals waiting for his approval. He turned it off. None of it mattered anymore. For years, Alexander Reed had built an empire of glass and steel, but here, beside this frail little girl who carried his eyes and his smile, he found something far greater than success, a fragment of the man he used to be. And for the first time in his life, he realized how small the world felt when you had everything, and how infinite it became when you had someone to love. Morning crept into the hospital room quietly, with the pale light of dawn slipping between the curtains. The city outside was waking up, cars starting, voices rising, life continuing, but inside Lily's room, everything stood still. The soft, rhythmic beeping that had filled the air through the night was gone. Only silence remained. Alexander stirred in the chair beside her bed, his head heavy against his folded arms. He had fallen asleep holding her hand, her tiny fingers resting loosely in his. For a moment, in that half-dreaming fog, he thought she was still breathing. He whispered her name, ready to finish the story they hadn't completed the night before. But when he looked up, he knew. The stillness told him everything. "Lily," he whispered again, though his voice broke halfway through. He pressed his forehead to her hand, still warm, but fading fast, and for the first time in decades, Alexander Reed, the man who ruled skyscrapers and stock markets, wept like a child. The nurse entered quietly, her eyes full of sorrow. She placed a small drawing on the bedside table. "She made this last night," she said softly. "She wanted you to have it." He reached for it with shaking hands. It was drawn in bright crayon, two stick figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. One figure was taller, the other smaller, with a pink dress and a wide smile. Above them, in uneven letters, she had written, "Me and Daddy." He turned the page over and found a short note on the back, written in her familiar crooked handwriting, "Thank you for coming, Daddy." I'm not scared anymore. His vision blurred as the tears came again, heavier this time. The walls seemed to close in, the beeping machines, the smell of antiseptic, the 2 white sheets, all of it unbearable. He gathered the drawing to his chest and sat there in silence, the sound of his own heartbeat loud in his ears. When he finally left the room, he didn't take his umbrella. The rain had started again, gentle and cold, but he didn't mind. Outside in the hospital garden, he stood beneath the gray sky, the pink letter and Lily's drawing clutched in his hands. For years, he had thought power meant control, over time, over people, over fate. But now he understood how fragile everything truly was. Her wish had shattered him, stripped him down to something raw and human. Yet in that breaking, something beautiful had taken root. He knelt by the garden's small fountain, placing the drawing beside the rippling water. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have been there sooner." As the rain blurred the crayon lines, he closed his eyes and let the world wash over him. For once, he didn't think about the company, the deadlines, or the empire waiting for him to return. All he could think of was a little girl's laughter, light as rain, echoing in the corners of his heart. And though she was gone, Alexander knew she had left him the one thing he had lost long ago, the courage to love, even when it hurt.